Hello. Thank you so much for being here this evening. My name is Leah Fulton, and I am one of 3 assistant deans of students here on campus. And we will get started in just a few minutes. Give folks a chance to get here in the space with us. Well, it looks like our numbers are holding a bit steady in terms of participants. So we're going to get started and folks can jump in as needed. This is our 4th session on parent webinars for our orientation and registration programming for the upcoming school year. And this one, like all others, will be available. A recording will be available on our family orientation webpage. So again, my name is Leah Fulton, and I'm one of the assistant deans of students and also parent liaison. And I'll be moderating today's panel, more of having a conversation with my colleague who'll introduce himself in a moment. Just want to do a couple housekeeping things before we get started. First, I want you to know that you can see us, but we cannot see you. So if you are having dinner or multitasking, no problem, we can't see you. The second is that we would ask that you type your questions into the Q&A function instead of the chat feature. Questions can get lost in the chat. The Q&A helps us keep track of which questions have been responded to and which ones have not. It is our goal to be able to respond to every question tonight. If there are questions that we are unable to answer today, we'll be sure to get resources to you to find the best place to get your question answered. So please do use that Q&A function, and it should be at the bottom of your screen and actually says Q&A. We do have staff behind the scenes who will be helping type responses to some of those questions. So thanks to those colleagues who are doing that work with us. And as I mentioned, a recording of this session will be available on the family orientation webpage, and we will get you that link. The last thing I'd like to say is just to ask if you could hold your questions for that Q&A for after the content is presented. Our hope is that we'll be able to answer questions that you have as best we can in advance. So hold on to those questions. Let's move through the content. And if you've still got lingering questions, then that'll open up our Q&A time, and we'll have plenty of time for that. So thanks again for being here, and I'm going to ask my colleague to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Hangmuel. I also am an assistant dean of students, along with Leah. I work in the dean of students office at St. Thomas. I've been at St. Thomas for a little over 13 years now. Most of that time I've been working with commuter students. It's really been a pleasure over the last decade plus to work with our students who live off campus, in addition to our veteran students, as well as a whole lot of other things that we're really excited to connect your students with. So I think I'm going to just dive into some of my presentation and content to get the conversation started. and then we'll have some conversation and question and answer. So real quickly, commuter students at St. Thomas, we tend to define that term as anyone who doesn't live on campus, so not in our university-owned residence halls. We kind of look at commuter students in two different lenses. Those who are commuting from a distance, often living at home, maybe with their families, or in a situation like with a relative. And then what we sometimes specifically refer to as neighborhood students, students who are renting in an off-campus property near our St. Paul campus. Two very different populations with very different needs, but our service, Off-Campus Student Life, serves all of them. We also have a resource room and commuter lounge in the Anderson Student Center. It's a space that has a lot of different functions that students can use when they're on campus. It can be your home base when you're coming to and from campus or have some time to kill between classes. There's a lounge space, computers and printer, we have a refrigerator, some spaces to eat, student workstations, and then staff support as well. We kind of say if a commuter student has a question on campus and they don't know where to go to get their question answered, this is a great place to go and get those answers that you're searching for. We have a lot of great staff that work in off-campus student life. We have a staff of undergraduate students called commuter mentors. These are upper class students who were first-year commuters themselves, who actually are paired with first-year students who are commuting to make sure they're connected, supported, engaged. Just like our resident students have an RA working with their floor, our commuter students have a commuter mentor working with them and supporting them. We have a team of students called neighborhood student advisors who work with those neighborhood students. I mentioned do some of our renter education, do education around what it's like to rent and sign leases, those kind of things. We have a graduate assistant who works in off-campus student life. Her name is Kaylee. She'll be joining us in August. We're really excited to have her as a part of the team. She supervises the different student staff, operates that lounge, makes sure things are running real smoothly, and again, serves as a great resource to our students. And then finally, our Director of Neighborhood Relations, Amy Gage, works real closely with the neighborhood, both the students and the neighbors who live in the neighborhood as well. Sometimes our students aren't the best neighbors, and sometimes our neighbors aren't the best neighbors. And Amy is a fabulous resource for helping students sort those issues out, as well as helping students navigate the realities of living in a residential neighborhood like St. Paul. I've been doing these presentations for a couple of years with students and parents. It's a little sad to not be doing them in person. I wish I could see your faces, but in this method, we'll get by. The first three topics listed there, parking and transportation, food, and student engagement, tend to be the topics it feels like most parents and students have questions about at the beginning of the year, if they're going to be commuter students. And then the fourth one, the impacts of COVID-19 on this year, kind of is a new one this year, obviously, but one that I'm guessing there's a lot of questions about as well. And so I'll allude to some of that also. Let me get down to business. Parking. If you're going to park on campus, it requires a permit. Commuter permits are $200 for the semester. I'm not going to call that cheap. St. Thomas is not a inexpensive institution, and adding more on top of that is not something to brush off. I will point out it is the least expensive parking permit on campus. Residential students pay significantly more if they want to park a car on campus. Faculty and staff, Leah and I, we pay more than this to park our cars on campus. So at least in the pricing, the university is recognizing that commuter students need an affordable option compared to those of us who are paid to be there or who maybe don't need a car as much in those kind of opportunities. So those permits can be purchased through parking and transportation services. It does require a pre-registration that will open on August 24th. I wish I could tell you a bit more about it, but we're rolling out a whole new system this year and they are working furiously to get it set up by that date. But I know once they have it set up, we'll be communicating frequently with our students to talk about what that registration system looks like and how to navigate it. But know that you've got some time before a parking permit needs to be taken care of. Driving is not the only way to get to and from campus. A lot of our students use Metro Transit's bus system. So our parking and transportation services will sell a Metro Transit permit. That is $150 per semester. You're probably looking at that and noticing it's more expensive than the parking permit is per semester, but you're not paying for gas, auto insurance, and it works 24/7. It's not just to and from campus. Students can use this permit to use Metro Transit anywhere it goes in the Twin Cities area, including the light rails. And so it's a really great option. Plus, I've often worked with students over the years who maybe aren't thrilled about using the bus, would rather be driving, but I point out to them that when you're caught 40 minutes in a car in rush hour traffic, there's not much you can do. If you're on a bus, you could at least be reading, prepping for that exam you have, taking care of yourself in some other ways, right? And so it can be functional time, and those buses can move through rush hour traffic probably quicker than most of our cars can, as long as you're driving safely, I'll say that. Registration for those permits will open on August 15th, so a little bit before the parking permit, but that also will be through that same system that will roll out then. That's my quick version on transportation. If you have questions on transportation, please feel free to put them in the Q&A now. I will say, I forgot to put this on the slide. St. Thomas operates a shuttle bus between our St. Paul and Minneapolis campus that runs during the day. It is free for students, faculty, and staff with their ID. It's departing each campus almost every 20 minutes. So I've worked with students who maybe drive to a park and ride in the suburbs, take a bus into downtown Minneapolis, and then end up taking our shuttle bus over to our St. Paul campus rather than using Metro Transit, because sometimes that can be a little bit more efficient. Just an example of a way you can use that service. Another thing students definitely care about when they're on campus is eating and having access to food, right? And so I just want to highlight, we have a lot of different dining options on campus. These all still will be open, available for our commuter students. I checked with our dining services about their plans just before this session to confirm that. So the View and the North Sider are two dining options. The North Sider is brand new. It won't even quite be open at the beginning of the school year. Function on a meal plan. Typically, those students can enter and pay a cash price to get a meal in those places. They're the all-you-can-eat option. They won't be buffets this year, but they are definitely, you can fill yourself up still plenty. Scooters and Teas are more, you pay for what you want. So if you want a sandwich, Teas is a great place to get sandwich. If you want a pizza, Scooters is a great place to get a pizza. You can also take dining food from other places into Scooters and Teas because they're not all you can eat. You could eat with other students in there, those kind of things. And then because we know a lot of folks want to be able to bring their own food and store their own food, we have a refrigerator in off-campus student life that's available during the daytime hours. Our office hours are 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So that even for night classes, there's something you could grab your lunch out of the fridge real quick. We are asking folks to label their lunch. We're not going to be storing any food in there other than personal items, and we're going to be cleaning it out every day this year, but definitely available for your use or for your students' use. Another thing I want to talk about is what engagement for commuter students looks like in this campus community in St. Thomas. I think a lot of times students who are living off campus feel like they can't be a part of the community, or they're not as much of a part of the community as the students who live in the residence halls. And I want to say that's absolutely not true. There are so many ways to get involved and connected and supported at St. Thomas, even if you're not in the residence halls. And so first thing I mentioned that commuter mentor, right? Again, an upperclassman who has lived this experience as a distance commuter as a first year. And can be a great mentor and support with that. They will plan frequent activities, they will plan connection points, they will reach out to every student and have a one-on-one conversation with them. If that sounds awkward to you, sorry, we're going to keep doing it because we want to reach out and connect with folks, right? We want to make sure people are supported and engaged. Really, we want to be a space for you in off-campus student life that you have that connection. There will be an online community for all of those commuter mentors and the commuter students that will roll out this year. It's a place to engage wherever you are, whether you're sitting at home, you're sitting on campus, whatever it might be, to engage with one another and support one another. There's student employment options. I've double checked with all of our HR. We still will have really robust student employment options on campus. Lots of options in dining services. Dining services always gives you a free meal if you work for them too. So that's a great way to balance those costs of food and get access to some good food. And they're going to definitely need folks to help this year, as they do every year. And so student employment, we actually see better retention out of our students who return semester to semester, year to year, of those students who have a job on campus, because it helps them afford it, it helps them get connected and engaged, and it helps them form connections with other students that they're working with, as well as the faculty and staff they're working with. Research with faculty is a great way to get engaged. There will still be research happening this semester. There has been this whole summer. St. Thomas's size allows for a lot of really great opportunities for undergraduate students to participate in research. So watch for those, especially if it's in an area where you're interested in studying. Our clubs and organizations, we have over 140 student clubs and organizations that are all planning on being active and vibrant this fall. They're going to engage in a lot of different ways, but whether it be related to whatever major you might be interested in, there's a club for that. If there's a hobby or an interest you have, from rock climbing to tabletop gaming to everything in between, there's clubs for that as well. And campus life makes it real easy. If you can find 9 other people who share your interest, you can start a club. So that's how we got 140 pretty quickly. But it's a wonderful way to engage with fellow students on a shared interest and stay connected with those. I really push and encourage the clubs connected to a major. It's great networking. You get some connections with upperclassmen students who are studying in that same field that can give you advice and support, connect you with great resources. A lot of times professors who teach in that field are connected to the club. They're bringing in speakers who work in the field outside of St. Thomas, right? So it's a great way to enhance what you're already getting in the classroom. And then at St. Thomas, there are tons of programs and events and different things that are going on campus and online all the time, and lots of ways to stay connected and engaged. Real quick, a couple of things I know related to COVID that I think are on commuter students' minds. Class schedules. I know our first year students got a chance to look at their class schedules starting on Monday and are starting to figure out which ones are in person, which ones are kind of a hybrid model, and which ones might be fully online. I've been working hard with our colleagues in academic affairs to make sure that if a commuter student has concerns about their schedule as it relates to on campus and trying to manage the needs of commuting, that their academic advisor that they meet with to review their schedule would be prepared for that conversation, but the student will need to raise that concern. The example I've been giving over and over again is if a student has 2 courses that are in one of those hybrid models where a professor says, okay, you're going to be on campus Tuesday and online on Thursday, and then another professor in a later class says you're going to be online on Tuesday and in person on Thursday, a commuter student may prefer to be in person on the same day and online on the same day. And so can advisors work with students on that? I also know they may not. I've definitely worked with students over the years who have questions about it being better for them to study and do their work on campus, so they want to be on campus all day, every day. We all know who knows what would be happening with K-12 schools, and if there's younger, brothers and sisters at home, sometimes that's a really hard place to study and get your work done, which then brings to the other side of the slide about when you're on campus. And so we're working hard to identify a lot of different areas. All of our public spaces will be open. The seating has been adjusted so that folks will be properly social distanced. And those are certainly a great option. I also know that many of our students, especially if they say have an online class between 2 in-person classes and want to be able to do that and stay on campus, might prefer to do that not having to wear the mask, or do it in a place with a bit more quiet and privacy. And so we're working hard to identify spaces that'll work for that. We'll likely have one in our off-campus student life lounge that we're working on a reservation system for and a checkout procedure for. And then also other spaces within the Anderson Student Center, our library on campus. Look forward to more communication about that as the school year comes together and we develop a bit more of those processes. But know that a lot of folks are watching out for the commuter students, especially the first year commuter students, and how we can support their engagement and transition during this time and still have them have a really robust, exciting St. Thomas experience, and at the same time balance what their needs and expectations are for the coming year. That's really my overview of content, because I don't want to spend too much time of me talking and not answering your questions. And so Leah, I guess I'm going to turn it back to you and see if there's anything I can help the participants with.
Okay, I was trying to get the mute button off. Thank you, Josh. Lots of content, helpful, I think really helpful insights. This is the time, if you've got any questions that are unanswered, to go ahead and use that Q&A function. It looks like So far, we've just gotten a couple. We did get questions in advance that that Josh integrated into what he shared before. So thanks for being attentive to those items, Josh. Um, the one question that I'm seeing in the Q&A that I think you responded to, but we'll just circle back to it, is this question about working with the advisor or professor when there are schedule conflicts. And I think that's one of the opportunities. I'll give this back to you, Josh. I think these are one of the times where there's real responsibility on the part of our students to kind of flex autonomy and independence to communicate directly with their faculty what it is they need. But I'll give that back to you, Josh.
Yeah, that's a great segue actually to something I forgot to say in my initial presentation. So I'm going to build off of what Leah said to give kind of a broad bit of advice for commuter students in this first year, and then specifically answer that question as well. So Leah's right. Students in general need to start working towards that autonomy and taking that initiative. One of the things I often tell commuter students is all of those opportunities, all of that engagement that you're hoping for in college, all of the support you might need if you're struggling in class or have a question about something, or just are unsure about if this experience that you're having right now is exactly what you want it to be. All of that support exists. It's just you probably need to seek it out a little bit. Our students in the residence halls have staff banging on their doors, getting them to go to programs and events, or, constantly engaging with them. We will send you lots of information, but it would be really weird if Kaylee and I showed up at your door off in the suburbs and knocked on it and asked you to hang out with us, right? So we need to offer those invites, but you need to accept them, and you need to step up and find some of those spaces. And so this is, with the advising appointment with the schedule, a great time to start practicing that, right? The students got an email, invited them to set up a meeting with their advisor to review their schedule. Prep questions ahead of time, set that meeting up. Students, if you want to set it up for a time where your folks could be with you, or an older brother or sister who's helping you, anyone who might support you in this wants to sit and listen into this as well and can kind of be that coach and support, that's a fabulous opportunity, but we really want you in the driver's seat, right? And so start taking those chances to talk to the professor. And yes, the advisor will give you a chance to talk through some of your concerns. There's very limited ability for them to make changes during that meeting, but they might be able to make some changes, or at least give you advice on next steps. And then after those meetings have taken place for first years, you'll have a chance to adjust your schedule yourself. The other thing is, some of the classes don't have pre-assigned days that you would be on campus, but the professor might have a sign-up sheet or might have a different way of coordinating it. And if the professor on that first day of class or in the week before class sends an email and says, this is how it's going to be, please work with your professor directly. All of our professors really want to support students and know that we have commuter students in the midst of our population that might have slightly different needs, and we want to support it. But it's just making sure it works out really well. The other thing I'll mention is all incoming first year students are in a first year experience seminar, which is a 1-credit course this year. It's new to us this year. And a handful of those sections are actually specifically commuter cohorts. And so it's a chance to connect with your fellow commuters, connect with people who are sharing that experience. And the professors for those were picked to be people who really know a lot more and have a lot more history of working with off-campus students. So we're excited about that opportunity. Leah, did I get the full question? I think I did, but I'm not. Yeah.
Yes, it does look like there are some additional questions related to parking. And I'm wondering if it would be helpful for us to, well, we can do our best to answer them, but some of the specifics may be best suited for the parking staff on campus.
I am seeing them. I know some of the answers, but I'll also readily admit, because parking services is changing their system this year, I don't want to overpromise something. So here's what I can say.
Mm-hmm.
There are dedicated commuter lots. I always recommend the Anderson parking facility as the best space for a commuter to go for parking. It's on the southwest corner of Grand and Cretin, yes. And it has 4 or 5 floors of parking available for students and guests. And so if you purchase a commuter permit, you don't need to swipe an ID. There's no gate that will stop you. You just go in and park. And actually, I believe I heard recently from our VP of Auxiliary Services that the new parking system, you don't even have to swipe your ID. It does photos of license plates and monitors them against license plates you've entered, which when you register, you will have to provide a vehicle ID, which is great because if, say, you're sharing vehicles in your family and you might be bringing, you know, the minivan one day and the coupe the other, you could register both and not have to worry about moving a parking permit back and forth or those kind of things. So that gives you a lot of flexibility that way. The main reason I recommend the parking facility though is how close, it's the closest parking to our Anderson Student Center, which is really the greatest place for a commuter to hang out throughout the day when they're not in class. It's the lifeblood of our campus. It's the heart of our campus. People are flowing through there frequently. There's a lot of rooms that people can check out and use in different spaces. It's where off-campus student life is located. There's a lot of resources in that space, and it's great parking for those options.
Thanks, Josh.
Also, sorry, I'm seeing a question. It's reminding me of something else in the Anderson Student Center, which is locker rental. So the Student Center does have lockers that can be rented. You go to the main information desk in the building. I think last year they were $10 for the semester or $15 for the year. I haven't heard anything about those prices changing. And they're a great resource for students, right? I know students who want to put their winter coat in it when they're just hanging out in the, you know, in the student center throughout the day, put their books in it so they're not bringing all of their books back and forth on the bus every single day. Folks who just fill it with, you know, cup of soup so that they can heat up a quick lunch if they forgot to bring something. Please don't put perishable stuff in there. That would be a problem. But those are a resource available to students as well.
Thank you. Josh, I'm noticing a theme in our questions related to space and the ability to social distance while on campus. So I'm going to give you this question, but I want to be able to make note that one of the questions is asking specifically about the anxiety that folks have around, you know, legitimately have related to our current environment.
Yep.
And I want to say if you have a student who's dealing with anxiety or depression or some other kind of diagnosis, that working very closely and very intentionally with disability resources right now can be really key and very valuable to help support them in their academic success. But I think the general tone of, again, legitimately lots of anxiety and uncertainty around COVID. Would you be willing to talk about the commuter lounge, social distancing, and other spaces around campus?
For sure. So from a social distancing standpoint, we have a little bit of an advantage in that the off-campus lounge is actually moving to a larger space in the next couple of weeks. And so we are going to intentionally set that up in our move to accommodate as much social distancing as possible, to accommodate all the social distancing we can in that space, right? And so we won't set chairs up next to one another. We're going to set them, you know, 6 feet apart. I'm working with our facilities to make sure that that space is workable. If we have furniture that would normally hold more than one person, making sure we put stickers and those kind of things on it so that we're really limiting the amount of traffic in those spaces and the long-term use of those spaces and the exposure. I also think, you know, the Anderson Student Center has a number of meeting rooms that folks will be able to check out. We've heard that from our folks, and the library has study rooms available as well that can be reserved. There's no cost to reserve any of those. Those are all part of your tuition, part of your experience at St. Thomas. And so those will be spaces available to folks as well. I also want to acknowledge that what I talked about with the autonomy and the stepping forward, I know that's hard. And especially with COVID, right? And so it doesn't mean you have to go find 40 people to ask all your questions for. Even if you can find one person, one staff member, one upper class student to be a mentor and an advocate and a support to start with, form that relationship strong. Selfishly, I think the commuter mentor is a great resource, but if it's not, your faculty advisor is a really great resource for helping navigate some of those kind of pieces, right? It's not that you have to throw yourself headfirst into having contact with everybody on campus if that's where your anxiety level is. or where your comfort level is, right? We want to be able to support you. And all of our offices, all of our support resources are still going to be available by email. There's still going to be some online functions, right? And so we're going to make sure from a distancing standpoint that there's a lot of availability. We have professors who aren't comfortable teaching in person because of their own conditions or their household's conditions, right? And then we're accommodating. If you have anxiety about being in class in person, this fall, please talk to your academic advisor about that when you meet to review the schedule. We will accommodate that. They will work with you to accommodate what you need in that regard as well. And as Leah said, Disability Services is an excellent resource for any and all sorts of things, even if you're just not sure and you have a question. The Katie, Kim, and Allie in that office are three of my favorite people on campus, and I tell that to them frequently, and they're friends. So please, they're some of the friendliest people I've ever met. So utilize them as resources as well.
Great. You started talking about academic counseling, Josh. We have a question about student athletes and their assignment to academic advisors.
Sure.
I give that to you.
In academic counseling, they'll often divide folks by different experiences, and there are a couple of advisors who work maybe with more of the athletes than others, but really all of them understand and know the student athlete experience really well. And what's great is our coaches know the student athlete experience really well also, and know that our athletes are students here first and need to find ways to prioritize their schedules for academics, while at the same time making sure we accommodate practices and games and those things as much as possible as well. And so there's maybe one or two that you might specifically be assigned to, but really all of them are fantastic resources for student athletes.
If I remember, I believe that Colleen Stevens is the liaison to athletics, but again, if you call academic counseling, they will get you to the right place and be able to meet the need.
Yep.
It's a very collaborative team there.
Yes, very much.
I'm noticing a theme around questions related to essentially our preparedness plan.
Yep.
If COVID numbers peak, our plans for after break. And so we're gonna get a little bit ahead of ourselves and tell you that July 29th will be our campus safety session for parents, our webinar, and during that time, we'll unpack a lot of our preparedness plan with senior administrators from across the university, from academics to our Center for Wellbeing. So if you have specific questions now, I encourage you to visit our COVID website. If we can get that link to the COVID page in the chat, that's going to be the best resource for answering those questions until that July 29th webinar. Thank you, Josh. I also noticed a question about the number of students who are commuters. Josh, do you have insight there?
I do, yeah. I normally lead with that. I'm sorry I missed that. So in our first year class in a typical year, it's about 8 to 12% of the incoming first year students that are living off campus. And the vast majority of that percentage typically living at home or commuting from a distance. Not very many renters typically in their first year. And then it actually shifts as students age more. And so it's actually 60+% of our undergraduate students that live off campus in any given year. And so full 4-year students, 60%, first years, right around 10%. And so for our first year students who are commuting, sometimes that feels like a really unique experience, or they can feel like they're the only one. They're not, but it can sometimes feel that way because people make assumptions about first years. That's part of the reason we've seen so much success in these commuter specific sections, right? Where a student has at least one space in their regular schedule where they know they're not experiencing that, where they are with others who share that experience and they can connect over that. And then as students continue to age, most of them don't live on campus their entire 4 years. And so that's something that to keep in mind, that it's actually a majority of students that don't live on campus.
Thank you. Um, the last couple questions that I'm noticing here, one is specific to study area in the library. And we talked about this earlier today, Josh and I did with our colleagues in residence life, and a similar question came up. Library and other spaces across campus will be accessible to students. It'll look different in terms of how furniture is arranged to encourage social distance, how much furniture is actually in the space. There'll be some caps in terms of how many people can access those spaces at one time, but they will be available. In terms of the procedures for reserving and those kinds of details, I would imagine that library staff are still working out those details, but I'm gonna leave space for Josh in case he's got other insights.
No, that's what I would say. There's normally a computer system that the library uses to check those out. My assumption might be that they would change it a little bit to offer some space in between uses for cleaning and those kind of things, but I'm not exactly sure either. And there's a lot of preparation that's going into it, of course.
The final question that I'm seeing that's not been addressed is related to the math resource room for online math courses. And I'm wondering if that may be a question for academic counseling.
It is. What I can say is all of the student support resources, whether it be the Math Resource Center, tutoring for different departments, those kind of things, those are going to be available whatever format the class is offered, right? And so if a student's taking an only online math class, not coming to campus, not going to the space of the Math Resource Center, they're still going to have access to that service. And the Math Resource Center, the other tutoring departments, the departments that coordinate tutoring are working to figure out how to make those resources really available for students who choose to engage them not on campus. We had to do it, for the back half of the spring semester last year. So we learned a lot about how to do online tutoring in a different environment, and folks are really ready for it. The specific details about which are there going to be hours that are online focused, hours that are in person, whatever that might be. I'm not exactly sure, but we'll have more information about that as we get ready for the year to ramp up. But one thing that has been a constant message here at St. Thomas is whether a student is in person, online, or a little bit of both, all of these resources that we use to support students and their academic success need to be available to them. And so that will continue.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
I'm going to pause long enough to make space in case there are any outstanding questions, and hoping that people have marked their calendars for July 29th.
Leah, while you're doing that, I'm just going to put up the contact information. If folks want to reach out to us in off-campus student life with a question about commuting, or if about this orientation experience they have a question, please feel free to use those emails. We check them every day and respond as quickly as we can.
Great, great. Well, it looks like we have not had any additional questions come through. We want parents and students to know that we are hard at work to prepare the campus for you for the fall, to encourage a safe and healthy and quality experience coming into this coming school year. That's one of the things that's really important to us as we think about our value, even of personal attention. That really matters for us. So if you have further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out in the coming days and weeks, particularly using that off-campus or orientation email that's there on the screen. And with that, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you found this time helpful. And one last time, I'm going to mention the July 29th webinar, specifically addressing safety and well-being. And we'll have administrators from multiple areas across campus who'll be able to offer detailed insight related to our personal safety plans, COVID testing on campus, and our plans for how we intend to keep the campus as safe as possible. So we hope to see you there.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it. Oops.
Thank you.
When will the university start its school day? Our first day of school is September 9th, so we'll see you then, if not before. Thank you all.
Thank you.